Hello, everybody, and welcome to Geopolitical Trends, where truth matters. I'm your host, Dr. Waralu. Very excited to be with you, my wonderful community. Very excited to be with you. So, uh, I'm going to be addressing for you today, providing you my own analysis about what's going on between Pakistan and Afghanistan. Whoever thought? Because if you know the background story of how the Taliban came about and the role of the ISI from Pakistan and how much they helped establish, now it looks to me like Taliban is turning on its masters. So the question becomes is, what will Pakistan do moving forward? So there are a lot of moving parts, and so I'm gonna be addressing all this for you in this live stream. So there are so many of you here, so I'm just gonna say hi to everybody. Welcome to Geopolitical Trends. Very excited to be with you. So I'm gonna get into it right away because I have a lot to cover. So, but before I'll do this, I want to mention something about some housekeeping items. Starting next week, I'm gonna line up some interviews with some individuals that I talked to prior to my leaving the US 2 weeks ago or so. So you will be looking or expecting some interviews coming forward. So I'll be doing that. I'm going to do headlines for you, then I'll jump into my conversation. So we're going to start first with a headline from that really I sort of didn't see it. It's not I didn't see it. It was unexpected. This one has to do with the foreign minister of Morocco, who is in Moscow. So looks like the discussions to enhance cooperation between Morocco and Russia is moving forward. So why? Is because during his visit, the foreign minister signed an MOU with yesterday. As a matter of fact, it was signed yesterday with a working committee between the two countries' foreign ministries. And what is the purpose of it? Is to strengthen the bilateral relations and explore their future. However, there is one other reason. That's to why Morocco will have to do this. Is because next door, which is Algeria, which I will talk about Algeria as a headline, is expecting a delivery of some fighter jets from Russia. Those are the Su-35. It's became a public knowledge now. So apparently the S-35, I have an image right here. Those are an advanced multi-role fighter jets. So the question becomes is, of course, anytime Algeria gets involved in this, Morocco will have to consider that, and vice versa. So the same applies to, it's like India and Pakistan. Anytime India purchase some types of weapon, Pakistan will have to do the same, and vice versa. So suffice it to say that I found it very interesting that the foreign minister of Morocco, his name is Bourita, is in Moscow. So, second headline has to do with none other than I don't have picture of. Well, you all know what Trump looks like, right? It's he's an idiot. I'll say it. I don't hold back. So anyway, what happened with Trump? Trump retracted his statements regarding Hamas, and now he threatens military action against Hamas. I mean, talk about hypocrisy, talk about double standard. But that's Trump. What do you expect? So Trump threatened yesterday to take military action against Hamas in Gaza. Only if you realize his previous statements in which he supported, here is the thing, he supported Hamas action against Israel idea. Makes you just wonder. And that's, again, this is Trump, and we're not going to be surprised at that. And the last thing I want to share with you as a headline has to do with Algeria. To those who are familiar with Algeria's history, Algeria is celebrating, or commemorating, rather not celebrating, its 64th anniversary of the Paris massacre against its migrants. It was what France did in Algeria. It wasn't pretty, almost like what we did in Vietnam and Laos and Cambodia. Yeah, that's how bad. So Algeria yesterday commemorated the 64th anniversary of the massacre committed by the French police against Algerian demonstrators in Paris who had been demanding their country's independence from a French colonial. So, and by the way, just part of history, because you need to understand this. This goes back to October 1961. That's when French police, on the order of the Paris police chief, his name is Maurice Papin, he gave the order to attack the peaceful demonstrations by thousands of Algerians demanding the country's independence from France. Of course, the police, the French police, that is, deliberately killed dozens of Algerians in the street and also in the metro stations. It's on the record. There is a historical record. At the same time, they have been throwing, or they throw a number of injured people from the bridges into the river, into the La Rivière Seine. It's a major river in Paris. So, and that's how it became known as the Paris Massacre of 1961. So, anyway, I just wanted to share these headlines with you. Let's get into our conversation about Afghanistan and Pakistan. So, here is how I'm going to do this. I'm going to do geography. I'm going to do history. I'm going to do the history of the Taliban. I'm going to do the history of the border between Pakistan. Then I'll do the analysis, and I'll conclude with an excerpt from my book, because I talked about this in my Saudi book. That's where I addressed this one here. So I'm sure you've been asking the questions. What led to the bloody conflicts between Pakistan and Afghanistan? There is no one single problem there or cause. So, because there are a host of factors involved in this. And of course, chief among them, as you know, Pakistan has accused the Taliban in Afghanistan of harboring members of the TTP. TTP stands for Tahrik-Taliban Pakistan. TTP, that's how it's known. So in other words, there is a Taliban in Pakistan, but you have to differentiate between Taliban of Afghanistan and Taliban of Pakistan, except that the Taliban of Pakistan gets its orders from the Taliban in Afghanistan. This is what the tricky part. So, of course, Afghanistan accused Pakistan of sheltering and supporting militant group. The problem now that the Taliban in Afghanistan having a problem with is the reemergence of some extremist groups in Pakistan. And the Taliban in Afghanistan are concerned about that. Why? It's because the tensions that this group in Pakistan might cause in Afghanistan. This is part of what the problem is. Second issue to this has to do with the unresolved issues on the Durand Line border. And I'm going to provide you a history of that border. For now, I'm just going to go with the general information regarding this. Think of it like Ladakh. Think of it like the borders in Kashmir. Think of it like the borders between China and India. Is the same. And if you only know who caused all this, we all know there's only one country. And we're going to get into that. Now, you think about not only these issues that I mentioned, but also the historical rivalry and the interference in each other's internal affairs. And that is why you have to understand at least the basics of it. Then a history will provide you a better understanding as to why this escalation between Pakistan and Afghanistan, majority didn't see this. But this leads us to ask the fundamental question. Are there elements outside the region that is influencing this, or even within the region? And we're not going to jump to conclusions. We're going to get into that as we move forward. Once again, what you need to understand is that Pakistan's claim that the Afghan Taliban have allowed TTP, remember, Tahrik-Taliban in Pakistan to operate from Afghanistan to conduct attack against Pakistan, meaning inside the borders or across the borders. So, of course, Afghanistan denies this, and this is where it's going to be the information war. Pakistan say one thing, Afghanistan say another. You know how this works. Information war. It happened when Pakistan defeated India. You all know India won about, because we all know how the media in India is. You know, the majority of the statements are can be confirmed. You know, India said no fighter jets were downed, whatever, when in reality they were 6. As a matter of fact, I just found out during my trip that France now refused to sell any more Rafales for India. Makes you just wonder, because the reputation that the fighter jets is not up to date. So, as I said, you think about the militant groups, you think about the unresolved border issues. So this is part of, you think about the refugees. All this paved the way for these tensions to emerge to the forefront. But the fundamental question is, why now? Why these issues didn't emerge, let's say, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years ago? Because remember, if you understand the involvements of the ISI in Pakistan with certain groups, which started way back, even around the time of 9/11. So let me do geography, let me do history, and we'll go into the other parts of the analysis. So let me share the the screen with you, and I give credit to World Atlas for this map here. There we go. Let me make this one bigger so for you. There we go. Afghanistan. So when you think about Afghanistan, it's a landlocked, mountainous country in southern Asia. Really, it's mountainous. I've been there. I've been on the ground on many times, starting in 2002 all the way to 2006, 7, somewhere around that time. It's mountainous. Really, the elevation is so high, so you have to be in a good shape to move up through those mountains. So it is situated in the northern and eastern hemispheres of the earth, and it is bordered by 6 nations. It is bordered by, as you see on the map there, by Pakistan in the east and the south, Iran in the west, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan in the north, and China in the northeast. Very interesting when you look at the map here. Like you look here, for example, Panjshir Valley, very interesting and strategic location here. The Hindu Kush, that's what you see, right? Mazar-e Sharif is another hot spot location. Kandahar, of course, used to be the hotbed for the Taliban headquarters when Mullah Omar used to be alive. Then you have Herat. Herat is on the border closer to Iran. That's what it is. So those are some key. Jalalabad, of course, Ghazni, and Kabul, as you noticed, in the capital of Afghanistan. Now, let's talk about history, because history will give us some really a better understanding of how Afghanistan has moved over centuries. The history of Afghanistan. So, because you have to go back all the way to 1740s, somewhere around that time. So, with none other than, at that time, it was a guy by the name Ahmed Shah Durrani. Ahmed Shah Durrani was the first ruler and the founder of the Durrani Empire, because Afghanistan back then used to be an empire. So, at that time, he was always, and he's been always regarded in history as the founder of modern day Afghanistan. So as a Shah, and you all know what the meaning of a Shah is, he relentlessly led some sort of a military campaign for over a quarter century, in other words, 25 years. And that was across West Asia or Middle East, Central Asia, and South Asia, that is. And by that time, it created one of the largest Islamic empires in the world, encompassing Afghanistan, much of Pakistan, Iranian Khorasan, and of course, the northern part of India. A lot of people do not understand the importance of this aspect because that was paved the way for how things evolved over time. But overall, when you think of the history of Afghanistan, you have to think about it in terms of how many times this region has been conquered or the Western powers tried to conquer. We're talking about from the time of Alexander the Great, then Genghis Khan, and it was later on was the British, and of course the USSR, and even after that the US. As a matter of fact, some historical record emit this last part. To me, we have to include the failure of the US also in controlling Afghanistan. As I said, from the time of Alexander the Great, Genghis Khan, the British, the Soviet Union, and the Americans. So one thing is sure is that the 20th century saw the rise at that time in Afghanistan of a monarchy. Used to be a monarch. To my knowledge, the monarch was living after he exiled. He moved to Italy. So, of course, during the 20th century, you know what happened in 1979. And that's when, of course, later after that, the subsequent rise of the Taliban and the civil war and the recent defeat of the US military intervention. But its history, you have to understand this. Its history, the ancient settlements in Afghanistan, goes back to about 7,000 BC, before coming the BC at that time. And that has influenced certain other civilizations in the region. And as I said, during the conquest, which, by the way, none of them succeeded in conquering Afghanistan. Alexander the Great goes back to almost 330 BC time. That's how. And later were the Mongols and their Genghis Khan. So in the 12th or 13th century, if I'm not mistaken. Then there were two empires, major ones, Achaemenid and Mauryan. Those are the two empires, major one. Why? The Achaemenid Empire controlled the region at that time, which was followed by the Seleucid and then the Mauryan Empire, which helped introduce Buddhism. That's how Buddhism was known. Do you all remember when the Taliban destroyed the big statue of Buddha? They blow it up. That's part of how it came about. So the ancient religions have been in that part before the arrival of Islam. You're talking about Zoroastrianism, that's a religion, Hinduism, of course, and Buddhism were practiced there. Then we move into the modern state of Afghanistan, the formation of modern day Afghanistan. And as I mentioned earlier, started in 1747 with Ahmed Shah Durrani, which was elected as a king at a tribe assembly, creating the Durrani Afghan Empire. But all this, the important aspects is what took place in the 19th century, which was known, and it is known in historical record as the Great Game. That's what's important. You have the three Anglo-Afghan wars. There were three, which, by the way, the British couldn't defeat the Afghan. Afghanistan achieved full independence from the British. Does anybody know what year Afghanistan gained the independence from Britain? The year, see if you can type it in the chat box, if you happen to know. What year did the Afghan get independence? Terry, 1948. No, before that. It was before that. Surprisingly enough, that it was way before that. So let me see if someone else can give it a try. I know it's slow. I don't see the answer quickly. Kurt Boss, 1989. No, you have to go way, way, way back. We're going back to GRA, 1890. 1912, Kurt. It was 1919. That's when it took place. So, meaning that Afghanistan gained its independence from Britain in 1990. However, and that's after that, the formation of the monarchy in Afghanistan took place till 1921. But still, on the historical record, 1919 is the official year when Afghanistan gained its independence. And of course, the 20th century and 21st, the 20th and 21st centuries brought in the conflict. So you starting from 1920 forward with King Amanullah Khan, which attempted a rapid development modernization programs. However, he faced resistance, and that led to his abdication. Then came in 1978, the presence of the Soviet Union. Of course, in the West, they presenting this as an invasion. It was not an invasion. I wrote about it in my Russia book after doing the research. The Soviets were invited by the central government in Kabul. This is where history gets manipulated. So I'm going to leave it up to you to go and dig into all this, because that's what I found. So, of course, the narrative goes that the Soviets invaded. And at that time, they're saying it was a communist coup led the country's alignment with the Soviet Union. And this was followed by the presence or the invasion, as the history says, 1979, which lasted till 1989 and led to a long, devastating war. Civil war, you have now the civil war, and you have the Taliban rule after that. So because what? Following the withdrawal of the Soviets, infighting among factions took place inside with the Mujahideen. Well, you have two things to ask about. Who was supporting the Mujahideen financially and who was training them? And I'm going to get into that once I finish this section here. So, of course, the Taliban emerged in 1990. That's when I think I have a picture, some, not all. And when I used to go to Afghanistan, I used to go out in downtown Kabul, and it was okay, I guess, but I had to, be careful. You have to be aware, of course. But suffice it to say, what I saw was the strict rules that, to me, as one who understands the religion and so forth, it's really deviating from what religion was all about. But suffice it to say, the civil war that took place inside Afghanistan after the withdrawal of the Soviet Union, that's when the Taliban emerged in 1990. And this, by 1996, they controlled the country and, of course, established an austere and theocratic regime, which, by the way, was bankrolled by the Saudis. Then came the U.S. intervention, September 11th attack, in response to September 11th attack. And of course, we've been there for almost 20 years, and we end up being defeated or humiliated the way we left that country. And you all know the rest of that. And I'm gonna cut this here so I can move on to my other things that I need to talk about. Suffice it to say that in 2021, the withdrawal of the U.S., the humiliating withdrawal of the U.S., ask any former military here, and you'll get them, they become livid about it because it's very humiliating. What this led to is Taliban took over again. The Taliban retook control of the of Kabul and swept through all the provinces in Afghanistan. They even took over Bagram Air Base with all the equipments we left over there. Now, one thing I need, and I'm going to get back to my topic here regarding the Afghan and Pakistan tensions. One of the reasons I mentioned has to do with the border. So let me share a map with you so you'll have an understanding of where things are. This is one of the longest. It's quite a long. It's about over 2,000 miles, to my knowledge. And it's called the Durand Line. And there is a reason why this number is here. The Durand Line. It was an agreement signed in 1893 between British India and Afghanistan. And of course, this divided ethnic Pashtun territory and was inherited by Pakistan in 1947. So the issue of tensions still persists. Afghanistan has never formally recognized the line as a legal international border. It's the same issue that we are witnessing between, for example, China and India, or you think about the border in Kashmir, Pakistan and India. It's the same arguments I can make here. And what the Pakistanis, they're viewing this as a contentious issue that divides the Pashtun population. Because you have to understand, when you look at the map of Pakistan, the map of Afghanistan, the southern part of Afghanistan, all here is Pashtun. This is where the Taliban headquarters is, or was, but now they are in Kabul anyway. So it's very, very important to understand this one. And of course, the border remains a source of tensions, and that's what led to the tensions back in 2017, if you recall. And what happened back then is that Pakistan decided to fence the border, which resulted in clashes because that line was never appointed. So the Durand Line, the agreement signed in 1893, which put the 1,600 miles border, was established through this treaty by the British. And of course, why they call it Durand? Because it was named after Sir Mortimer Morand. He's the one who, and at that time, he was the king of Afghan, Abdurrahman Khan, that signed it. The other thing you need to understand of who are the Taliban. And I'm not going to go all the way back. I'm going to just share a screen with you for the leadership, so you'll have a better understanding, of course, of the recent, share screen. Okay, right there. Let me share this with you here, so you'll see. You're looking at the leadership of the Taliban right here. So you have the Mawlawi Habatullah Akhandanzada. He's the head. This is the guy who replaced Mullah Omar. Mullah Omar was one of the founders of Taliban. Then you have the next one, this deputy here, this guy, Mullah Muhammad Yaqub. This is the son of Mullah Omar. Of course, he won't put a picture. One key here that you need to understand, to those who know a little bit about Pakistan and Afghanistan and so forth, this individual right here, Haqqani. It used to be a Haqqani network. And of course, the ISI had to work with the Haqqani network at that time. We were struggling to understand this particular individual, the Haqqani, his father, this guy's father, who was at the top at the time. So, and those are the figures that really have been through from way back. All of them are in their late 60s and so forth, and they're still operational because this guy holds the military, and also he's at the same time chief justice, and the religious leader, and I don't know how they get that stuff, but in any event, this is how they have their structure of the government or their political thing. So don't be surprised that even Taliban have an intelligence service. So, and you'll be surprised to find out that they are very, very sort of, what's the word? Very shrewd in dealing with what's going on. They have a better understanding. So, but there is one issue regarding the Taliban, which is a red line in Pakistan, is that no political leader in Pakistan will ever dare to support Taliban publicly at that time. The last one who did this was none other than Imran Khan, who is now in prison, as you know. Imran Khan, at that time, he said that, and I'm quoting his particular wording. He said, now the Taliban are, in quote, breaking the chains of slavery. So, of course, it didn't settle well inside inside Pakistan. Why? Because don't ever think about Pakistan government as one cohesive unit. You need to understand that Pakistan government and military are not. They are not some sort of monolithic institutions, but rather they are entities, groups, competing interests. This is why the ISI does what it does, and the civilian government does what it does, and Shehbaz Sharif does what he does, and the opposition. That's the arguments for this. So, suffice it to say in this conversation about what's going on here is that it was the Saudis that have bankrolled the Taliban. Even as a king in Saudi Arabia officially support Afghan government, because here is what I found ironic. I find it ironic that Saudi Arabia has cooperated with Russia. And how could we forget the images I argued in my Russia book? How could we forget the images of mujahideen in Afghanistan, supported and financed by Saudi Arabia and trained by the United States to fight the USSR after its invasion of Afghanistan in 1979? That's exactly what I argued back then. So don't be surprised. Don't be, because here is what I need you to understand. There is much more into what's going on between Afghanistan and Pakistan. It's the greater game that started in the 19th century is still going on as of today. So, and all this comes on the heels of, prior to clashes, the Afghan foreign minister took a trip to India. Makes you just wonder, is it coincidence? Let me see if I can get you the picture right there. This is the representative of Afghanistan. Not the Afghan, I'm sorry, is the foreign minister. His name is Amit Khan Muttaqi. Muttaqi went over to India, meet with Johnson. So, does this mean that India is supporting this? Not necessarily. We're not going to jump to conclusions. However, I am not going to refrain from stating that India's interests will be served if it strengthens its relations with the Taliban against Pakistan. So, because you have to think about it. You have to think about this. Indian government announced it will upgrade its technical mission in Kabul to the status of an embassy, which has been shut down for 4 years. So, because when you think about it, the whole Afghan delegation, now that is because the foreign minister had to go to India. Why would you want to go to India during this particular tense moments? So, and at the same time, the Afghan delegations are saying, we will be happy to talk with the Afghanis regarding this particular issue. I'm going to share a clip with you. I'll do the translation for you, and we'll then we'll continue per se. Let me share a screen with you. All right, let's play this one here, and I'll do the translation as I move forward here.
بين البلدين. تستمر باكستان في إغلاق كافة معابرها الحدودية مع أفغانستان.
Pakistan is continuing now to close all crossing borders with Afghanistan officially.
بالرغم من إعلانها التوصل لوقف مؤقت لإطلاق.
And this despite the agreement on a temporary ceasefire.
نار أو هدنة مؤقتة. هذه الهدنة المؤقتة تستمر ل8.
And this temporary ceasefire will last for about 48 hours.
48 ساعة وتحديدا حتى الساعة 4.
Which was exactly till about 4 p.m. Of Saudi time. I think they go by Saudi time, Mecca time.
بتوقيت مكة المكرمة من عصر يوم الجمعة. الهدف من الهدنة هو
which was supposed to be today. But if you look at the time, it's 1300 hours almost here. It's almost 9 p.m. in West Asia, in Saudi Arabia, that is, if you think about it that way. So it passed.
إفساح المجال لحوار بناء ينهي الخلاف.
And the reason for this is to open the door for a bilateral dialogue, sort of a substantive dialogue
بين البلدين بحسب ما جاء في بيان لوزارة الخارجية
and this based on the statements coming out of the foreign ministry of Pakistan.
الباكستانية. والحديث عن خلاف استمر عدة أيام
Talking about a conflict that is now lasted few days and resulted
وكان دمويا حيث قتل فيه عشرات
it was a bloody conflict with so many dead individuals on both sides.
من الجنود الباكستانيين والأفغان إثر اشتباكات مسلحة عبر المنطقة الحدودية.
This is during the armed conflicts on the border line between Pakistan and Afghanistan.
الاستمرار في إغلاق الحدود يسبب
The closure of the border line now is creating humanitarian issues for the locals who depend on the borders being open.
مصاعب عديدة للسكان المحليين الذين يعتمدون على التجارة البينية لكسب رزق.
For them, they make a living, they depending on those goods that come in across the border and so forth.
كما أن سلطة الموانئ الباكستانية علقت كافة
Even Pakistan now decided to halt all the shipment of containers
إجراءات التحميل وشحن البضائع المخصصة لأفغانستان
that is specifically for Afghanistan.
ضمن اتفاقية تجارة الترانزيت.
And this was based on a transit agreement between both countries, Afghanistan and Pakistan.
وذلك مخافة تكدس مزيد.
And the reason why Pakistan decided to take this decision is to prevent long lines of trucks on the border.
من الشاحنات المخصصة لنقل البضائع والمتكدسة أصلا
which is originally is getting now so long at the border. The Pakistanis decided to halt all the container shipments to Afghanistan.
ما نراها هكذا متوقفة على جانب الطرق المؤدية للمعابر الحدودية. كذلك تتوقف بالكامل حلقة تنقل المسافرين.
The same applies to travelers. There is complete halt of traveling across the borders on either direction.
مدنيين بين البلدين.
Okay, I just wanted to share this with you. Let me stop this one here and go back. So suffice it to, and you have to understand these aspects of it and why it is important to understand. Liking this video so far? Don't just be a watcher. Go ahead and hit the like, share, and subscribe button. And don't forget to tap the bell so you will not miss any of my videos or live streams. This way, you will be supporting a channel that stands for the truth and objective reporting. The choice is yours. Thanks for your support. Now, let me go back to the visit of the foreign minister to India. And why is this important? Because if you know the history of what took place between Taliban and India, you will go back to 1999. What happened in 1999? You're all familiar with the hijacking of the Indian jet. Okay? And what happened then? In 1999, the hijacking of the Indian airline. It was, I recall, the flight 814. And all this, who orchestrated this? Wasn't the Afghan. It was the Pakistani. And there were 5 Pakistani hijackers from Harakat al-Mujahideen group. Now think about it, who was supporting this particular group. And those hijackers at that time demanded the release of militant. They were including Masood Azhar in exchange for 155 hostages. So the 7-day ordeal, because it was 7-day, involved landing in 3 different locations. The first one in Amritsar, the second one in Lahore, and the third one in Dubai, before the plane was taken to Kandahar. You all remember where Kandahar is. Let me show you. I don't know if it will show it here. No, they won't show it there. So it was taken to Kandahar. Okay. And this crisis, of course, what happened after the Indian government negotiated with the militant, it decided to release the 3 individuals. And those 3 individuals were the key. And I happen to be, let's say, I'll just share the picture and we go from there. The first one is Ahmed Omar Saeed Sheikh. Where is he? That's his picture right here. Now, this individual is a British Pakistani, was the terrorist, whether he's still or not, it's beside the point. And this individual became a member of the Islamist Jihad group, Harakatul Ansar or Harakat al-Mujahideen. They had 2 names at that time. So that's the first one. The other key individual was none other than Masood Azhar. And I have a picture of him right here. Masood Azhar, where are you? Right here. Masood Azhar, he is a Pakistani militant leader who is the founder and current leader of a militant organization. That just gives you an idea. And the third person is Mushtaq. This is the third person, Mushtaq Ahmed Zargar. Now, this one is a Kashmiri separatist leader and a militant active in Kashmir insurgency and a founder of the militant outfit Al-Umar Al-Mukhayyadeen. So, my point is you have to understand this background to understand the tensions, how the Taliban turned on Pakistan right now. So, and of course, now the Pakistanis have retaliated by bombing a particular location in using fighter jets. There is, as we speak, there is a delegation right now that is going, an Afghan delegation that is going to Doha to discuss the crisis with Pakistan. And Sharif, the prime minister of Afghanistan, is ready to sort of negotiate with this. But Sharif himself, and even before him, you have to think about the role of the ISI. And I'm going to bring in a picture of the former head of the ISI. His name is Faiz Hamid. Faiz Hamid was the head of the ISI. This is his trip to meet with the Taliban at that time. But he's in prison right now for unrelated issues. Of course, they didn't want to disclose what is the reason for his arrest. And it has nothing to do with the opposition party, as they say. So what you need to understand is we need to think in terms of now you have these tensions all of a sudden emerge. You have the foreign minister of Afghanistan going to India. You have the US thinking about what's going on over in that part of it, because we have always been involved in that. You have to think about what's going on regarding the economic aspect between Pakistan and China, regarding the economic corridor, the China-Pakistan economic corridor. And you have to think about what's taking place right now. And this is why you are now sort of Pakistan have to deal now with a very new and deadly enemy. This is Noor Wali Masood. This is the guy that is now a thorn for Pakistanis. So how are they going to deal with this guy? Because it's an easy task right now when you have the group that you used to fund and train is turning on you. Because this is, in my opinion, this is the most serious clash between the Pakistan and Afghanistan in decades. And when you think about it, I don't see anything good coming out of this, because you have to think about what will be the outcome for something like this, because the underlying issues have not been resolved, which paved the way for this. Could it also be a foreign intervention through some elements that trying to sort of pave the way for this. Yes, they can reach a ceasefire, but will it hold? Remember, just they broke the ceasefire yesterday. And that's going to pave the way for more tensions moving forward if they don't get on it ASAP and resolve this. Once you start having the exchange of fire between the two, it's not going to lead to any. Remember, for us, we've always used Pakistan to push our agenda vis-a-vis Afghanistan. Why? Because we couldn't control the Taliban. We couldn't control or influence Kabul. This is the whole reason for why when we left, it was some sort of humiliating way by which we left that particular country. So the other aspect of it has to do with the refusal of Imran Khan to allow the establishment of a drone base, of the U.S. drone base on a Pakistani border. Does this has to do anything with it? Maybe, maybe not. For now, we need to understand that you have regional countries, mainly India, that is looking at this as an opportunity, because what India is seeing that the U.S. is sort of favoring Pakistan over India, and India will not want to let this go. But I am not saying that India is the one that is fueling this. We can't jump to or state something that is not factual. But that led me to ask the question, given the timing, given the visit by the foreign minister of Afghanistan to India, it doesn't take a genius to figure this out. So, and I'm going to conclude with an excerpt from one of my books. I think it was the Russia book, when I wrote that I find it, especially when I go back to how the Taliban came to power to begin with. This one has to do with the tensions between Saudi Arabia and Iran about who is going to influence Afghanistan, which ideology it was going to be. And that's why I said when the Saudis and the Russians sort of started to cooperate again a few years ago, 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, I said to myself, I find it very ironic that Saudi Arabia now is cooperating with Russia. How could we forget the images of Mujahideen in Afghanistan, supported and financed by Saudi Arabia and trained by the United States? So some, as I argued, some may think, oh, no, I don't think so. But at the same time, facts are hard to ignore. So because I asked the logical questions, what did the US gain from invading Iraq? My answer is nothing. Did America defeat the Taliban in Afghanistan? The answer is no. So the United States involvement in ongoing conflicts comes at an astronomical cost that has led to the widening gap right here at home in American society. Because here's the hard facts. A 20%, a reported 20% of households in America own more than 84% of the wealth. So the American dream, part of our some sort of identity, is fading before our eyes. Aimed our recklessness, ignorance of understanding, and a really petty obsession, political squabbling, corruption, dysfunctional education system, income inequality, a lack of meaningful investments in infrastructure here, a crumbling infrastructure also, and of course, a broken tax system. So when a nation spends more than it makes, every American has the right to ask where the country is headed. Moreover, when that same nation spends itself into more debt to fight a foreign war in the name of a confused ideology, it becomes the duty of every responsible, productive American citizen to say the country is headed the wrong direction. So for all its concern, literally, with events the world ever, Americans are now overlooking an even bigger problem. And you know what that bigger problem is? The American dream. It's done. This is the harsh reality when you put things in perspective, in understanding. So whether we are involved in creating this conflict or not, it's beside the point. Whether India is part of this or not, it's beside the point. So Pakistan will have to take its own responsibility in dealing with this. Afghanistan is the same. So their countries, they can rule it whatever way they want. So except that when you think about our presence in Afghanistan, and we haven't gained anything from it, only we wasted money, soldiers, and money that we could use right here. But in geopolitics, you can't just be thinking in these terms. You have to think on the big picture. And that's exactly why I wanted to do this for you. I hope this provides you some sort of an insight into at least understanding the history of Afghanistan, how it came to be, and also understanding that this conflict is something is brewing. That's the way I look at it. So let me see if there is at least a question or two. I will be happy to answer them, but if not, I'm going to sign off. And as I mentioned earlier, I will be working on now arranging interviews for you with the individuals that I talked to prior to my leaving the US 2 weeks ago. Then we'll go from there. I'll prepare also some other topics for next week. I'm always open to your suggestion. Please make sure to leave me a comment, hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe. As always, remember, geopolitics impacts your daily life in more ways than one. Till next time, bye-bye.